Okay, fine.
So I want to welcome everybody to our Wednesday night discussion group. Tonight, it's on the parashat called Chukkat. Chukkat comes from the Hebrew word chok. And a chok is a regulation or a statute that doesn't really have a logical explanation, but God wants us to keep it, and He has a reason for it. So, what I'm going to do, as we do every week, is I'm going to share the screen because I prepared the reading. And we begin in the book of Bamidbar in Numbers, chapter 19. And we're going to be going from till 22, verse 1. And so we're beginning here. I'll begin reading, and then I know Terry likes to read, Jerry likes to read, and Miriam from time to time likes to read. Iris, I know you don't. So what I'll do is I'm going.
Once in a while, I don't
Okay,
mind.
you let me know. Let me know when you want to read, and it's good to share it, although I will interrupt in between. Now, as I said last week, our sages have come up with a word called pardes, not Pardo like me, pardes. And it's an acrostic for P R D Z S. And it's four ways of interpreting the scriptures. The P is the Peshat, which is the direct meaning. That's what I like to deal with. The R stands for Remez, which is a hint. The D is a teaching. I like that. And the S is the mystical, the sod, the mystery. The Torah is very deep. You could take it at face value, and you can go as deep as you want. You will find all kinds of mystery in its pages. But my desire is that we learn how to apply something that happened thousands of years ago to today, because obviously the people lived at a very different time. We don't have the temple. We don't have the Mishkan, the Ochel Moed in the desert. We don't give sacrifices anymore. But it's almost like we are, we have to have a way of presenting ourselves to the Creator the way we did in the past. When we do something wrong, when we hurt someone, when we do something unintentionally to another person, the first thing we need to do is to acknowledge it and to bring it to, and here we would bring an animal. In this case, this is a statute here. It says, the Lord spoke to Moses and to Aaron, saying, this is the Chukkat. Here it says, Chukkat of the Torah, HaTorah, which the Lord has commanded, saying, speak to the children of Israel that they bring to you a red heifer. This is the first time that you see in the Torah that they're bringing. Is a heifer female or male?
It's female.
Exactly. We always brought a male. In this case, it's a red heifer, a red female, faultless. In Israel, they're looking today for this red heifer. Up to now, because they want to rebuild the temple, they're trying to find a pure, it says, where there is no blemish, upon which never came a yoke. But they haven't been able to find it. And because it's no longer needed, you shall give her to Eleazar the priest, the Kohen, and she shall be brought forth outside the camp and be slain in front of him. Before his face is very literal. Eleazar the Kohen shall take some of her blood with his finger and sprinkle the blood toward the front of the Ochel Moed 7 times. The heifer shall be burnt in his sight. Her skin, her flesh, her blood, with her dung shall all be burnt. This is a complete offering to God.
You know why the rabbi, or I don't know, what do you know about the significance of it? All the other sacrifices being male, and this is the only one that's female.
That's a very good question, Miriam, and I'm hoping that you will look it up and let me know,
Okay.
because I didn't prepare for that
I
question.
have some ideas, but they're just
What
my
what are
ideas.
some of your ideas?
Well, one of them is the female bring forth life through their body. So maybe it has something to do with you know life. Life is through God. I'm just being metaphorical. I don't know, but I think
Well, much of this is metaphorical. Like, for instance, the next verse, it says, "And the Kohen shall take the cedar wood, the hyssop, and the scarlet." Now, cedar was the tallest of trees in Israel. It represents grandeur, pride. While the hyssop was the smallest of bushes. It was used as a broom, which represents the smallest of things. And the scarlet, do you remember last week, we had, I think it was last week, when we were reading the story of Rachav. Was it last week or the week before? Rachav was the woman who had a, they, some say she was a prostitute.
right.
And when the spies came to where she was living, they she hid them. She didn't give them up, and in return, they said, when we come back to attack the city, I think it was it Jericho? No, that wasn't
No, it
Jericho.
wasn't
Oh
Jericho.
my goodness. That's why I'm not a scholar, because my memory is horrible. But I remember that she had to put a scarlet thread on the window so that they would see it, and when they attacked the rest of the city, she would be saved. So this represents saving. So for me, from the greatest to the smallest, we will be saved. Yes, Iris. Iris, are you on mute?
Yes, I was. Okay, why are they using red?
I don't know. Maybe because it was easy to see. Maybe it represented blood. In Hebrew, there's so many pictures. The whole idea of red has to do with the blood of life. It's easy to be seen. There's many questions that can be answered, and that's one of the things we can Google, or you can Google after. Take down some questions, write notes, because these are things we could look up ourselves. When I have a question, immediately I go to Google. Why did this happen? And you'd be surprised how the answers are there, because people do studies on it. So here they're taking the cedar wood, the hyssop, and the scarlet, and they're casting it in the midst of the burning of the heifer. Then the Kohen, he shall wash his clothes, he shall bathe his flesh in water, and afterward he may come into the camp. And the Kohen shall be unclean until evening. So here, he just washed his clothes, he just bathed his flesh in water, but he's coming into the camp, but because he was next to this burnt offering, he has become unclean until the evening. He who burns her shall wash his clothes in water, bathe his flesh in water, and shall be unclean until the evening. A man that is clean shall gather up the ashes of the heifer and lay them up outside the camp in a clean place. It shall be kept for the congregation of the children of Israel for a water of sprinkling. It is a purification from sin. So here the man who is clean becomes
Okay, when they say clean, they're not talking about physically clean.
No, that's
So
the
it's
difference.
ceremonially.
Yeah, the word for clean, if we see here, is tahor. And the word for unclean is tameh. And it doesn't literally mean like he's full of dirt. What it means, he is clean enough in his soul to approach the Creator. And the same thing with unclean. He
No,
cannot.
but in this case, when they say one of them is clean, as one that's clean may approach. So what made that one was clean? Why was that person clean?
Well, that's the hook. We don't understand. Why is it that the ashes of the heifer makes him clean?
Also, the one who's, but how was the one who's standing, who they say the one who's clean shall gather up the ashes. So how did he become clean?
By gathering up the ashes. Here,
Well,
he
it
that
doesn't
gathers
say.
the ashes of the heifer shall wash his clothes and be unclean in the evening, and it shall be unto the children of Israel and to the stranger who sojourneth among them for a statute forever. It's like it's the one who is clean becomes unclean, and the one who's unclean becomes clean. I don't understand it because it's really something that is, even King Solomon, it says when you read it, even King Solomon couldn't understand the mystery of the red heifer.
No, but I guess I'm not even talking in a deep way. They said when it says only the man who's clean could touch the ashes. Just go up again to verse 9. And a man that is clean shall gather up the ashes. But how did he become clean if he hasn't yet touched the ashes? Like the priest is not clean, in verse 7, he shall be unclean. Then it says he that burned. Anyway, I guess I'm just confused about what's going on.
Well, I guess the man. These are really good questions, and I'm hoping that we'll have them answered as we go along.
Okay.
A man who is clean, I guess, who is presentable to God. Maybe he hasn't sinned. He's standing there, and he's right before God, and he gathers up the ashes of the heifer. He lays them outside the camp in a clean place. It shall be kept for the congregation of the children of Israel for a water of sprinkling. It is a purification from sin. And he that gathers the ashes of the heifer shall wash his clothes and be unclean until the evening. And it shall be to the children of Israel and to the stranger who sojourns among them as a statute forever. He who touches the dead, even any dead man's body, shall be unclean for 7 days. The same shall purify himself on the 3rd day, and on the 7th day he shall be clean. But if he does not purify himself the 3rd day and the 7th day, he shall not be clean. These are things that pertained to them. So we have to look at how does it pertain to us now. And I remember one of the things that our rabbi said is that, let's say you have a very good friend who is suffering. They've been through a great loss in their life, and their soul is heavy. It can be compared to maybe being unclean. And you go to them as a good friend, and you listen to them unburden themselves, and they're putting their burdens on you. In that way, they're alleviating their heaviness, and you're taking the burden on you. So you have to find a way to unburden yourself. And this is how we are in community. And this is a picture of what this whole thing is of the red heifer. It's not so much to get into all the little details of why who's the clean man and who's the unclean man, but the principle of it is that when someone is heavy, they're going to someone who's light to unburden, and the one who is light takes on the burdens of the other. He becomes heavy, and then he has to go and find a way before God to cleanse himself of that burden. My rabbi used to be a counselor, and people would come to him one after another telling him their problems. And he literally, if he took it all upon himself, it would make himself sick. So he had to find a way to unburden. And this is the idea of the red heifer, that it would be the way that the people could unburden themselves before God. Now, whoever touches the dead, even the body of any man who is dead, and does not purify himself, he has defiled the tabernacle of the Lord. That soul shall be cut off. And the word here for cut off is karet. Very often that is used when someone is cut off from the people of Israel, when they've been disobedient by going against God's commandments. He cuts them off from the people. And in those days, living outside the community really, literally meant death. Today, we're cut off when we're disobedient to God's Torah. That soul shall be cut off from Israel because the water of the sprinkling was not dashed against him. He shall be unclean. His uncleanness is yet upon him. This is the Torah. When a man dies in a tent, everyone who comes into the tent and everything that is in the tent shall be unclean for 7 days. This is where we get the idea of Shiva. And for Shiva, you're kind of set apart from everyone else. It's not only to unburden yourself, although that time is also to unburden the heaviness that's, upon with the loss of a loved one. And every open vessel which has no covering, closed bound upon it, is unclean. This is a mystery. Whoever in the open field touches one who is slain with a sword, and one who dies.
Sorry to interrupt, just one thing.
Yes.
Some things could be literal though, no? Every open vessel, I mean, there's so many things that can contaminate
Yes.
something. So it could partly be based just on,
Yes, absolutely true. Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Miriam.
Okay.
And whoever in the open field touches one who is slain with a sword, or one who dies by himself, or even a bone of a man, or a grave, shall be unclean 7 days. And for the unclean they shall take of the ashes of the burning of the purification from sin, and running water shall be put into a vessel. And a clean person shall take the hyssop, dip it in the water, sprinkle it on the tent of meeting, upon all the vessels, upon the persons that were there, upon him who touched the bone or the slain, the dead or the grave. And the clean person shall sprinkle upon the clean on the 3rd day, on the 7th day, and on the 7th day he shall purify him, and he shall wash his clothes, and bathe himself in water, and shall be clean at evening. But the man who shall be clean shall not purify himself,
The man that shall be unclean.
and shall not purify himself, that soul shall be cut off from the midst of the assembly, because he has defiled the sanctuary of the Lord. The water of sprinkling has not been dashed against him. He is unclean. This shall be a perpetual statute to them. And he who sprinkles the water of sprinkling shall wash his clothes, and he who touches the water of sprinkling shall be unclean until evening. And whoever the unclean person touches shall be unclean, and that soul who touches him shall be unclean until the evening. There's a lot in this, to tell you the truth, that I personally do not understand. And I could go deeper in it, but at this point, for me, my take, Terry, it would be good if your background, if you could take the blur away from your background, then we'll be able to see you a little
I
better.
don't know. I don't know how to do that.
Okay, I'll show you after.
Oh, okay.
But it's basically when you go into next to your stop video, there's a little place that says blur my background or unblur my background.
Oh, I didn't know. Okay, well, that's okay. I just stood
That's
up.
okay. The idea of being clean and unclean is to be presentable before God. And we know if you were going to meet the Queen of England, you would dress in your finest. You would buy some flowers, or you would get something special. You would bring her a gift. If you had done something terrible and you couldn't look at her in the eye for some reason, you may feel that, you know what, I'm not worthy to stand in her presence. But it's much greater when we're going into the presence of God. I don't think we have any idea of what it must have been like for Moses to go into the tent of meeting and to stand face to face and meet with the presence of our God. Most people don't even think of it. But it's like when you have done something and you feel dirty and ashamed, You don't want others to know. You don't want them to shed light on it. I remember when I was a kid, my father would say, you don't air our dirty laundry in public. Nobody should know what goes on. We all have things that we don't want everybody to know. But the one who knows everything is God. There's nothing that we can hide from him. So we have to be honest with ourselves. And here, the red heifer, like the other offerings, were to bring these offerings, and they had to be pure, the best of our flock, to bring them to the temple, and they would be presented. We would present our sin before the priest, the Kohen, and we'd have to tell him what we did. And he would take the animal, he would kill it. We would watch this animal who we raised. We would watch it be killed. And let me tell you, it was painful. And then we realized what we had done, and we knew we had to make it right. We had that then, but what do we do today? How do we relieve ourselves of our guilt, of the things that are bothering us today? We need a way to do that, and that's what this is teaching us. When you're in community and you have someone who you can trust, who you can go to, and you can talk to about the deepest parts of yourself, who won't judge you, but can understand and help you to know that, you know what? God forgives, but let's make it better. Let's do something right. If you've done something wrong, we're going to do it right. Okay, now we're going into, just to give you a little background where we are now. We are jumping ahead 38 years. We're right, when we went to Mount Sinai, it was the second month of the second year when we were in the desert. Now, we're 38 years later at the entrance of the Promised Land. And we're just about the whole generation, except for two people, Joshua, the Jew, from the tribe of Benjamin, and Caleb, the Kenizzite. He was not a Jew. Only the two men were able to enter the Promised Land, because when they went in with the other 10 scouts to scout out the land, they brought back a good report, and they said, we can do this. Our God is with us. Don't be afraid. So now here we are at the entrance of the Promised Land. Okay, Terry, you want to read a few verses? I'll tell you when to stop.
Alrighty. And the children of Israel, even the whole congregation, came unto the wilderness of Zin in the first month. And the people abode in Kadesh, and Miriam died there and was buried there.
Okay, so we're going to stop just for a second.
Sure.
Miriam was like the mother of Israel. She was the sister, the oldest sister of Moses. Second came Aaron, and then came Moses. And here Miriam died. And there's a midrash that says wherever Miriam went, there was water. And that's why the next one says, verse 2,
and there was no water for the congregation, and they assembled themselves together against Moses and against Aaron. And the people strove with Moses and spoke, saying, would that we had perished when our brethren perished before the Lord. And why have ye brought the assembly of the Lord into this wilderness to die there, we and our cattle? And wherefore have ye made us to come up out of Egypt to bring us into this evil place? It is no place of seed or of figs or of vines or of pomegranates, neither is there any water to drink.
Okay, so this is the next generation. The first generation died for exactly this reason, because all they did was kvetch and complain. God kept giving and giving. He supplied manna. He supplied water. He says, the shoes on your feet will not wear out. Your clothes will not wear out. I've brought you out of Egypt. And here says, again, they're saying, why did you bring us out of Egypt to this evil place? Imagine. it was a land of milk and honey, and they had already seen it. The scouts went in and they said, there's so much there. They came back with these huge grapes. It was a beautiful land. And look what they say. It's no place of seed or figs or vines or pomegranates. They couldn't see.
And Moses and Aaron went from the presence of the assembly unto the door of the tent of meeting, and fell upon their faces, and the glory of the Lord appeared unto them.
Imagine. So here again, instead of Moses and Aaron yelling at them, they go from the assembly, they go right over to the Ochel Moed, and they fall on their faces before God. And this glory, the kavod, here, kavod, yud he vav he, Adonai, falls on them. Jerry, you want to read the next few verses?
Where's it starting? What?
7, right here, 7.
And the Lord spoke unto Moses, saying, take the rod.
Which rod?
Take the rod.
Which one? Do you remember from last week? Who remembers? Which rod?
Is that the almond one?
Remember all the tribes. Yeah,
Sprouted.
remember all the tribes had to take a rod, and each rod had the name of the 12 tribes. And Moses said, the one who God chooses will be the one that buds. And it budded almonds. So here Moses is saying, take the rod. Okay, go ahead.
Take the rod and assemble the congregation, thou and Aaron thy brother, and speak ye unto the rock before their eyes, that it give forth its water. Thou shalt bring forth to them water out of the rock. So thou shalt give the congregation and their cattle drink.
Okay, hold on.
And Moses,
Wait a minute, Jerry. We read about this in an earlier parasha. While they're in the desert, Moses was told to, again, there was no water. Moses was told to take his staff and hit the rock, and water came out. But here, look what it's saying. Pay attention. Take the rod and speak to the rod. Speak to the rod. Okay, let's see what happens.
and Moses took the rod from before the Lord as he commanded him. And Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly together before the rock. And he said unto them, hear now, ye rebels, as we to bring you forth water out of this rock.
No, here. Listen, you bunch of bums. Moses and I, Aaron and I, do we bring forth water from this rock? Go ahead.
And Moses lifted up his hand and smote the rock with his rod twice.
He struck it twice.
And water came forth abundantly. And the congregation drank, and their cattle. And the Lord said unto Moses and Aaron, because ye believe not in me to sanctify me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore ye shall not bring this assembly into the land which I have given them.
Imagine, this is heavy. Moses brought our people out of Egypt. He led us for 40 years in the desert. He had to deal with millions of us. Imagine, not just 5 here, 5 crazy people. He had to deal with millions of us there for 40 years. And now, just as he's ready to enter the promised land, because you didn't believe in me, to glorify me, to raise me up in the eyes of the children of Israel, you shall not bring this community into the land which I have given them. Imagine how he must have felt at that moment. Go ahead, Jer.
These are the waters of Meribah, where the children of Israel strove with the Lord, and he was sanctified in them.
Iris, would
And
you like to
Moses-
read a few verses?
I just want, waiting for a pause. I have to get off. I have to go lie down.
Okay, I'll send you the recording.
Okay, perfect. Goodbye, everybody. Take
Bye,
care.
Iris.
Bye
Take
bye,
care.
Iris.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Aaron.
Okay, Jared, continue.
And Moses, yeah. And Moses sent messengers from Kadesh unto the king of Edom. Thus saith thy brother Israel, thou knowest all the travail that has befallen us, how our fathers went down into Egypt, and we dwelt in Egypt for a long time, and the Egyptians dealt ill, and our fathers. And when we cried unto the Lord, he heard our voice, and sent an angel, and brought us forth out of Egypt. And behold, we are in Kadesh, a city in the uttermost of thy border. Let us pass, I pray thee, through the land. We will not pass through the field or through vineyard, neither will we drink of the water of the wells. We will go along the king's highway. We will not turn aside to the right hand nor to the left until we have passed thy border.
And Edom said to him,
And Edom said unto him, thou shalt not pass through me, lest I come out with the sword against thee.
okay, hold on for a second. So here we are. These millions of people are at the land of Edom, from Kadesh to the kingdom of Edom. Who knows what Edom is? Who was the brother, the twin brother of Jacob? Esau. Jacob and Esau. They were twins. I want you to listen to this. They had, who were the parents? Do you know the parents of Jacob and Esau?
Isaac.
Isaac and Rebekah. Jacob and Esau were twins. Jacob became the father of Israel, and Esau became the people of Edom, the Edomites, who are not considered Jews. How is Jacob a Jew, and how is Esau not? What does that tell us? It's not blood. It's not who we're born from. It's where the heart is. God chooses from the heart. He doesn't choose from the bloodline. He doesn't choose the firstborn. He chooses the heart. King David was the 8th of the brothers. And we see this all along, that it's always the heart, the intention of the heart. This reminds me where it says here, thou shalt not pass. Remember that from the movie, Lord of the Rings?
Oh, I'm trying to think.
When
Yeah,
Gandalf, when
yes.
Gandalf is fighting with, anyway, that's just.
Yes, I remember. I love
Okay,
that.
you want to continue, Terry?
Okay.
Verse 9.
Number 19. And the children of Israel said unto him, we will go up by the highway, and if we drink of thy water, I and my cattle, then will I give the price thereof. Let me only pass through on my feet, there is no hurt. And he said, thou shalt not pass through. And Edom came out against him with much people and with a strong hand. Thus Edom refused to give Israel passage through his border, whereas Israel turned away from him.
So we see Israel's enemies are very old. Our enemies are not what we see today, is not new.
Mhm.
It began with as soon as we left Egypt.
Oh, for sure. Yes, and they journeyed from Kadesh, and the children of Israel, even the whole congregation, came unto Mount Hor. And the Lord spoke unto Moses and Aaron in Mount Hor by the border of the land of Edom, saying, Aaron shall be gathered unto his people, for he shall not enter into the land which I have given unto the children of Israel, because ye rebelled against my word at the waters of Meribah.
So here we see, again, Aaron is also. But it's very interesting about the Hebrew. Aaron shall be gathered to his people. What does that mean? What does that mean to you? Any ideas?
I'm thinking, gather to
He's
his people.
he's going to stay with them in the desert. He's going to pass away with them in the desert.
Is that what you think? Okay.
Well, it's a possibility.
When it's an expression when we're gathered, when we're going to go to be with our forefathers, and his people means his forefathers.
Oh, I thought you were looking for some more.
No, it's the spiritual understanding is that life goes on, that there's life after death. He's going to be
okay.
with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob
Oh,
and his
okay.
forefathers.
Oh, okay. That yes. Right.
Yeah,
into
he's
his
gathered to his people. It
Right.
means it's not an end.
Right. Okay.
Here he shall not enter because he won't be here anymore, but he'll be gathered to his
Okay,
people.
that's great. I wasn't thinking about that.
So
no,
I like that. I like that extra explanation because I mentioned he's going to be gathered. He's going to pass on, which I like the way you expressed it.
Well, this is
better.
very typical of how our people see death, that we remain in the memory of our families and we live on by them keeping our memory alive, but it's much deeper than
It's
that.
more than that.
It's far more than that.
Thank God.
Yeah, really, thank God.
really, yeah.
Okay. Jerry, you want to read some more?
Take Aaron and Eleazar his son, and bring them unto Mount Hor, and strip Aaron of his garments, and put them upon Eleazar his son, and Aaron shall be gathered unto his people, and shall die there. And Moses did as the Lord commanded, and they went up into Mount Hor in the sight of all the congregation. And Moses stripped Aaron of his garments, and put them upon Eleazar his son, and Aaron died there in the top of the mount. And Moses and Eleazar came down from the mount. When all the congregation saw that Aaron was dead, they wept for Aaron 30 days, even all the house of Israel.
Isn't it amazing? What if someone came to you and said, God said that your days are over? Come up to Saint-Agath, and I'm going to take you up to be with your
I
people.
was just thinking that. Could you imagine if you knew exactly?
Imagine if you knew when you were going.
Yeah.
I don't know how he felt. I don't
Wow.
think he was afraid. Because he had been in the tent of meeting in the Holy of Holies when he spoke to God. He was connected. Let me tell you, he was plugged in. Miriam, do you want to read some?
Just a few lines, honorary
Okay,
lines.
you
'cause
let me
we're
know.
quite fatigued.
No problem.
And the Canaanite, the king of Arad, who dwelt in the south, heard tell that Israel came by the way of Atarim, and he fought against Israel and took some of them captive. And Israel vowed a vow unto the Lord and said, if you will indeed deliver this people into my hand, then I will utterly destroy their cities. Okay. And the Lord hearkened to the voice of Israel and delivered up the Canaanites, and they utterly destroyed them and their cities. And the name of the place was called Hormah. And they journeyed from Mount Hor by the way to the Red Sea, to compass the land of Edom, and the soul of the people became impatient because of the way. Sorry, it's not a bird. And the people spoke against God and against Moses.
Again.
Wherefore have you brought us up out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? For there is no bread and there is no water, and our soul loathes this light bread.
Meaning that's the bread that God had provided for them, the manna in the desert. God had provided for them, and they still are yelling, why did you bring us out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? There's no bread. There's no water. How many times did he give us water? Let me continue. And the Lord sent fiery serpents. These the word for serpent is nachashim. Nachash is a serpent. But these were fiery serpents, which means when they bit you, it was like fire among the people, and they bit the people, and many people of Israel died. It was like a plague. When we fetch and complain against God, let me tell you, we get sick and we die. This has happened over and over in our history. This didn't just happen here. And
it's not only just we complain in our lives, obviously, but there's a point at which it's beyond complaint. It's a blaming of God.
It's not trusting him.
Yeah.
No matter how many times we've seen what he's done for us in our lives, we still fight him. We don't believe him. We don't trust him. Sorry, Miriam, what else were you going to say?
Basically that, because we kvetch all the time. But there should be another word for it that's even beyond. You're right, it's lack of trust.
It's a disrespect. It's a dishonor to his name, to his reputation.
Yeah.
Because we have a God who has a name. His name is Yud He Vav He. And we are the people who are meant to bring his name to the whole world. And meaning that we are his representatives, and it's like Moses, when he struck the rock, he said, am I supposed to bring water from this rock? And look what happened to him. Because he dishonored God. He took the glory for himself.
But also just the act of hitting the rock.
When he was told to speak to it.
Yeah.
And how easy is it to do that? And the Lord spoke to Moses, make a fiery serpent and set it on a pole. And it shall come to pass that everyone who is bitten, when he sees it, shall live. And Moses made a serpent of brass, set it up on the pole, and it came to pass that if a serpent had bitten any man, when he looked up to the serpent of brass, he lived. How is this possible?
You know what? I just thought of something.
What?
Well, just as metaphors, like we spiritually died because of the serpent in Eden, Gan Eden, and now the symbol of the serpent is to give life. Really, it's to look to God.
But that's the whole thing. We weren't looking up at the serpent. We were being obedient. Because it says, it shall come to pass. Anyone who's bitten, when he looks up and he sees it, he shall live. It's a little bit like when we were in Egypt and the last plague came, the 10th plague. Who remembers what that plague was? The death of the firstborn. They were to take the blood, put it on the doorpost. When the angel of death saw the blood on the doorpost, whoever was the firstborn would live. It wasn't because they were perfect people. It wasn't because they didn't sin. It was because they were obedient. And here, those who were obedient, who trusted God and looked up. Now, I spent a time in Christianity. In Christianity, what they would say about this is that that's why Jesus was put up on the pole, and whoever looks to him will be saved, shall live. Has nothing to do with that. Nothing at all to do with that. As a matter of fact, there's a verse, let me find it here, in 2 Kings 18. Let me see, where is it? 18:4. Okay. Now, this is about King Hoshea. In the 3rd year of King Hoshea, son of Elah, Hezekiah, son of King Ahaz, who was horrible. King Ahaz, his wife was Jezebel. Israel was a mess under him. So this is King Hezekiah. He was 25 when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 29 years. He did what was pleasing to the Lord, just as his father or his forefather, King David, had done. He brought down the shrines. He brought down and smashed the pillars and cut down the sacred post.
The pagan stuff.
All the pagan things that were in Israel. He got rid of them. He also broke into pieces the bronze serpent that Moses had made. For until that time, the Israelites had been offering sacrifices to it. It was called Nehushtan. It's like Nachash. It's a play on words in Hebrew. There's one word, Nachash, for serpent, and the other one is Nechoshet, which is bronze. So he trusted only in the Lord God of Israel. There was none like him among all the kings of Judah after him, nor among those before him. So you see, it's very natural for human beings to want to make things into gods, to worship things, worship idols. Here, the bronze serpent that Moses had put up there was meant not to be a pagan ritual, but to be something that would, what happened here? Something that would that when people got sick, they looked up, and it was as if they were obedient to what God had to say. It's all about trusting God. Okay, Terry, you want to continue?
And the children of Israel journeyed and pitched in Oboth. And they journeyed from Oboth and pitched at Ije Abarim, in the wilderness which is in front of Moab, toward the sun rising. From thence they journeyed and pitched in the valley of Zered. From thence they journeyed and pitched on the other side of the Arnon, which is in the wilderness that cometh out of the border of the Amorites. For Arnon is the border of Moab, between Moab and the Amorites. Wherefore it is said in the book of the wars of the Lord, Veheb in Supa, and the valley of Arnon. And the
And
slope.
just one thing, I've always been fascinated, but when you see these sort of references, just sort of mentioned on the side, just in passing,
Yeah.
like there must be, all the things that probably weren't marked down, all sorts of things that were.
Exactly, and there are many books that probably are somewhere in one of the caves that might have been
Yeah.
put away, or they were destroyed at the time of the temple. When the
Right.
temple was destroyed, many things were destroyed.
And the slope of and the slope of the valleys that inclineth towards the seat of Ar, and leaneth upon the border of Moab. And from thence to Beer, that is the well whereof the Lord said unto Moses, Gather the people together, and I will give them water. Then sang Israel this song, Spring up, O well, sing ye unto it. The well, which the princes digged, which the nobles of the people delved, with the scepter and with their staves, and from the wilderness to Matana, and from Matana to Nahaniel, and from Nahaliel to Bamoth, and from Bamoth to the valley that is in the field of Moab by the top of Pisgah, which looketh down upon the desert. And
Okay,
Israel.
Jerry, you want to continue?
Jerry?
Okay.
Okay.
And
Number
Israel sent messengers unto Sihon, king of the Amorites, saying, Let me pass through thy land. We will not turn aside into field or into vineyard. We will not drink of the water of the wells. We will go by the king's highway until we have passed thy border. And Sihon would not suffer Israel to pass through his border. But Sihon gathered all his people together and went out against Israel into the wilderness and came to Jahaz, and he fought against Israel. And Israel smote him with the edge of the sword, and possessed his land from the Arnon into the Jabbok, even unto the children of Ammon, for the border of the children of Ammon was strong. And Israel took all these cities, and Israel dwelt in all the cities of the Amorites, in Heshbon, and in all the towns thereof. For Heshbon was the city of Sihon, the king of the Amorites, who had fought against the former king of Moab, and taken all his land out of his hand, even unto the Arnon. Wherefore they speak in parables, say, come ye to Heshbon, that the city of Sihon be built and established. For a fire is gone out of Heshbon, a flame from the city of Sihon. It hath devoured Ar of Moab, the lords of the high places of Arnon. Woe to thee, Moab! Thou art undone, O people of Shermash. He hath given his sons as fugitives, and his daughters into captivity unto Sihon, king of the Amorites. We have shot them. Heshbon is perished, even unto Dibon, and we have laid waste even unto Nophah, which reacheth unto Medeba. Thus Israel dwelt in the land of the Amorites. And Moses sent to spy out Jazer, and they took the towns thereof, and drove out the Amorites that were there. And they turned and went up by the way of Bashan, and Og, the king of Bashan, went out against them, he and his people, to battle at Airdry. And the Lord said unto Moses, fear him not, for I have delivered him unto thy hand, and all his people, all his land, and thou shalt do to him as thou didst unto Sihon, king of the Amorites, who dwelt at Heshbon.
So we heard from Og, the king of Bashan, when we read the story of the spies, when they went to spy out the land. And it said that in Deuteronomy 3:11, that Og's bed was made of iron. It was 13.5 feet long and 6 feet wide. That's how huge he was, how tall he was. And the people came back shaking in their boots. They were so afraid of fighting. And God kept saying, don't be afraid. I am with you. And here again, the Lord said to Moses, fear him not, for I have delivered him into your hand, and all his people, and in his land, and you shall do to him as you did to Sihon, king of the Amorites, who dwelt at Heshbon. So they smote him and his sons and all his people, until there was no one left remaining, and they possessed the land. And there's only one more verse. And the children of Israel journeyed and pitched their camp in the plains of Moab, beyond the Jordan at Jericho. You remember what happened at Jericho?
Yeah.
Joshua fled the battle of Jericho, and
the walls came tumbling down. And you know how, again, they wouldn't let them go through. Nobody Israel was always in this land. And Israel was going to have a huge portion of the land. And God told Joshua to take the Kohanim and to take their shofars and to walk around the wall 7 times blowing the shofar. And what happened? The walls came tumbling down. Did they tumble down because the sound was so strong? Why did they? Nobody could have taken down those walls for God's self.
Even if there is something about sound vibrations, but that doesn't mean God wasn't involved in it, because it's these sort of things could happen, but they happen. God chooses the place and the time, but there is something scientific about sound, a certain
but
level.
not enough for the shofars to
Huh?
tear the wall down. I don't believe that the sound of the shofars were enough
No,
to
I
tear
don't
the
believe
wall
it
down.
either, but sound could do a lot more than we realize.
Yes, sound can make us
But
happy.
I'm just making a principal point that because there are things in nature that can explain what we call miracles, it doesn't mean they take away the miracle. You know, things happen in nature that are unbelievable. Even with what they call the parting of the Red Sea, there could have been a time where there was a drought, whatever. All I'm saying is God's miracles go beyond. He created the physical realm, and the timing, and it's God's timing that's the miracle as much
Exactly.
as the actual event.
God uses his nature to create his miracles. He lets us do what we do, and the rest he does. And the whole idea of the shofar was a call, was a powerful. When Moses went up to get the 10 Commandments, there was shofar sounding from the heavens. The shofar had a very powerful sound. There's so many stories about the shofars and the miracles in the Torah. I love those things. But I see it's time to say goodnight.
Wow.
Terry's going schluffy.
Yes.
I'm so glad we had this
This
time
time together, just to
just to
have,
have a laugh or sing a song.
to learn a little about the Torah, and to know how to apply it to our lives.
Definitely. Good night.
Yes, we say
Good
good
night.
night.
Yes.
Good night, everybody.
Good
Sleep
night.
well.
Thank you, Peggy.
Thank you. Thank you.
Beautiful teachings. Beautiful.
Oh,
Thank you
yes.
so much.
You
And
help us to understand.
and it's really just us scratching the surface, which is all that I can do. It
Thank
just
you.
goes to show that anybody can do it. If
Oh,
I
no,
can
no,
do
no.
it, anybody can. So have a wonderful evening. I wish you all Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
And God willing, we'll see you next week.
Okay. Bye. Thank you.
Hold on.
Bye,
Thank
Jer.
you.
Shalom. Bye,
Bye-bye.
Jerry, we'll see you on the mountain tomorrow, okay?
Bye, Terry.
Yes.